So the topics of the day for our international are Kim Jong Un, Koreans' leading cause of teenage death, relocation, farm grant, Laos Flood, new uniform, help for sex workers, free farm pets, and protesters of today. Please stay with me. Let's get into this. For this next section, I want to give my thoughts. There are many rumors going around right now about, first off, where is Kim Jong Un? And actually, first off, I do think it's kind of nice because it is attention away from the COVID-19. But this whole example gives a deep understanding of our culture and our beliefs. And so I would like to share my stuff. First, you have some people saying he's dead. Like Japan said it, some U.S. people said it. Even Tim Pool went off it 2 days ago and said Kim Jong Un is dead. Where did he get his source? From the U.S. newspaper. First of all, you should never believe a U.S. newspaper for international news. You should at least try to backtrack that to a newspaper in the original country. And there never has been a newspaper that has said that Kim Jong Un is dead or whatever in North Korea, South Korea in this case. So that's why I never believe that. Follow the country instead of the propaganda machine. Now, this brings up how easily people and citizens are able to be persuaded so easily. You know, a few years ago, the U.S. did, oh my gosh, we did a night raid and we killed Osama bin Laden. And the whole U.S. was just cheerleading away. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They never saw a body. They never saw a picture. And they even said, we threw his body in the ocean to honor his tradition. But the majority of the U.S. blindly believed it, like instantly. And they say it's so easy to believe a big lie versus a small lie, and it's so easy to follow the sheep with a lie than it is to question the truth or sanity. I myself never believed that they killed him that night. He probably was dead, and the contracts for whatever, for the warmongering moved on. So they used him for as long as they could. And then they moved on. And then the weapons of war in Iraq. Other things that I felt about how they tried to persuade us, like the U.S. tried telling us, you know, in the 90s, China's bad. China has hot money, but we don't. Or China is money manipulation. But hey, here we are right today, printing out all the money. Or they would say China doesn't allow people to have their freedom. But what did we do after 9/11? Well, let's put a spy on every American in the country. Freedom Act, Patriot Act. So it's like, you know, it's okay to question others and shame them for it, but we'll hide what we're doing. Again, I never believed that the U.S. was not doing what they said other countries were doing. But let me get a little further in depth. Now, so we are conditioned to feel and express. When we are conditioned to, oh my God, yeah, let's cheer. The fat porky pig is dead. The communist guy is dead. Well, first off, out of all the pictures we've seen of Kim Jong Un, he's not even fat. Maybe slightly chunky. I'm from California, and I could tell you there's plenty of people that are 3 times his size. Those would be fat, okay? And as for wanting somebody dead, that's again, I feel my country wants us to condition communism's bad. Well, if communism's bad, then how could you explain someplace, say, like Vietnam? You know, they are a communist country, and they just handle their virus. They handled 0 deaths. They never closed down. You know, things like that. I think there's as many forms of communism as there are democratics. And most of them may be bad, but there's some good and bad and everything. But again, are we doing that to just hate somebody so we can enrage your feelings to get you on board to okay us to use you, whether it's your labor later through your taxes or whatever. Um, and this brings me to the disrespect of locals' feelings. I myself have never taught in North Korea, but Switzerland or Sweden, one of those two, has an embassy there. And they did hire English teachers to go to that country. And a few of those teachers did podcasts of their experiences there and teaching there. And when they did, like this one I listened to was Kim Jong Il when he died. She's like, yes, the kids are conditioned to believe a certain way and act a certain way, but they love their country, and almost everybody in the world loves their country. It doesn't matter where you come from. Home is home. And she says when he died, they were so sad, and you could see them crying, and it meant something to them. It's like they lost part of their country. I can relate to this. And myself, I went to Bali, then Newport is this little island, and there was this little, was it like two or three families that lived on this island with nothing. It's like little 2, 3 huts, all right? And this little kid was just running naked, like across this rocky little ocean. No school, no nothing. I don't even know how he would get education. But I asked him, "Don't you want to be on the mainland? Don't you want to, go to the city?" And he just replied back to me, "This is my home. It is all I know. It is what I love." And so that's it was almost a decade ago, but that sticks with me. People love where they come from. They love their history. So we should not knock what they may enjoy because it's part of who they are. And why is he hiding, you may ask? Well, first off, why does he have to have somebody on him 24/7? He hid for 6 weeks in the past, and before that, his father and Bess hid plenty of times. If you recall, just a month or two ago, in in Iraq, the U.S. used a drone to kill the high ministry official for the Iran government, and then so yeah, why should he hide? Well, you killed somebody else on foreign land, so he doesn't have to expose himself. So that's kind of, and he also has a virus going around. Maybe Kim Jong Un, not Un, but his Kim Jong Il's father had many houses, private houses, underground, above ground, all over North Korea. So he could be in any one of those houses. And my last part is freedom. What is freedom to you? Some of these North Koreans, they'll say they're happy and they're free to do what they want. The other ones, yes, they want to be more westernized or they want to go try something different, and that is fine. But freedom is what you value, whether it's your time, whether it's your rights, whether it's what you do with your family, and so forth. So don't be so easily blind. I will never give you false information. If I tell you somebody's dead or if I tell you an incident is happening, I will make sure it is the real thing. I don't want to be like Tim Pool. I don't want to be like CNN. I don't want to be like many networks that give you false trash. I want to give you something that's valuable for your time. And so I don't wish this guy harm. I don't necessarily like him, but he represents a country, and therefore I should not wish harm on him. So those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts, though? How people are easily manipulated to believing something. Oh yeah, by the way, where is our weapons of mass destruction? Hmm. All right. So let me know about your thoughts about, is it about, again, persuading a society to think or act a certain way and conditioning them. And they say it goes from one generation to the next. Leave your thoughts below. I'd love to hear. Okay, on to our second article of the day. Suicide remains leading cause of death for South Korean teens and youth. You know, almost every year they do a happiness survey of children around the world, and almost every year South Koreans remain toward the bottom of the happiest list. Okay, but at the same time, if you walk into a room with a hundred business owners, the South Koreans have the highest chance of owning their own business than any other nationality combined. And my other part of that is, what extreme do you go? Do you go to, I am an individual snowflake and my life is the most important, to where they may not get along with others, they may always put themselves first, may have a lot of hard problems and not get a good paying job or whatever? Or do you push them hard in their youth so they can make good money and support themselves later in the future? Like, South Korea has almost no welfare, and they have a strong desire for education in itself. So let's get into this. It's very kind of short. Suicide remains the leading cause of death among young people in South Korea in 2018. A report showed Monday, a chronic problem that has plagued the nation for more than a decade. The suicide rate per 100,000 people aged between 9 and 24 stood at 9.1 in 2018 and 7.7 in 2017, so it actually rose. Suicide has been the #1 cause of death for young people since 2007, according to the report by the Statistics in Korea, peaked in 2009 when it was 10.3. Traffic and other accidents came in second at 4.6 deaths, so almost half. Okay, and then followed by cancer. I didn't know South Koreans had cancer for these kids. 2.9. Okay. South Koreans aged between 13 and 24 were most worried about their future jobs, followed by academic performance and physical appearance, according to the report. Yeah, I worked at a high school, and when all the girls would graduate, their parents would change the girl's face. So when they went to university, they'd find a husband. What do you think about that? The report said 28% of middle and high school students had depression in 2019. It showed that 6.7% of teenagers in the middle and high schools smoked in 2019, with 15% having drunk some form of alcohol in the last year. According to the report, those that were 6 to 21 age reached 7.82 million in 2020, according to 15%. The proportion is expected to further fall between 10% by 2060, the report said. All right, so I'm going to stop there. But so my question is, when I was in Korea, it would be very common for university students to jump on the railroad tracks, Amtrak's, fast trains, kill themselves. So they put those bars up. And it's still very common for them to jump out of their apartment building. I was in one city, and a middle school kid killed himself right from the school right across the street from me because he failed some exams, and all my students saw it. Then another time, the president, Roh Min-ha, he was a former president before President Lee. He got caught in a scandal, and what did he do? He jumped off a mountain. So it shows you, it doesn't matter if it's a young kid or an old kid, they think they can just jump. They don't have to face responsibility. And then the very next day, the school I was working at, one of my teachers was pregnant. She went onto a rooftop and jumped off and killed herself. So they've got problems with that. But again, what would you tell a kid that wants to commit suicide? And again, what is better, a kid that's a special snowflake, or is it better to be just to make the kid work hard so they get a good job? South Korea has very few single mothers. South Korea has no welfare, or practically none. So there's a lot of things. They're all very dependent. They are very family focused. That's their welfare. And so, which way would you push your kid? That's what I want to know. And how would you deal with the stress of school when you were a student, whether high school, university, or even your stress at work? How do you deal with it in a rational way? Please leave your comments below. I would love to hear. Okay, moving on to something more positive. Indiana nonprofit lands a grant to train refugees in farming. New Haven, Indiana refugees from a Southeast Asian nation who've settled in a northeastern Indiana will be learning how to farm in the Midwest thanks to a federal grant landed by a nonprofit group. Okay, so this grant got a 3-year grant for $300,000 from the U.S. Department of Health and Services for northeastern Indiana. Now, the Heartland Communities Administrator, he basically said that it's a farming project. The 14 participating refugees are mostly former farmers who fled former nations of Burma. I did get this article out of a Burma newspaper, now known as Myanmar. So yeah, for the Fort Wayne area is a home of hundreds of refugees who have fled persecution and the turmoil in Myanmar. Each farmer is being assigned a plot ranging from 1/2 to 1 full acre. Young experts that they will be planting crops during the last 2 weeks of May. They can grow whatever they want. It's their small business, Young told the journalist Gazelle. If it all goes as planned, she said, the farmers will share their newly acquired skills with each other and their children, planting the seeds for a second generation small business owners. Young expects that some of the crops produced by the farmer plots will be added to baskets for produce sold by the local Plowshares Food Cooperative, which aims to give a boost of local farmers and increase shoppers' access to food. Now, the reason that this caught my attention, because first, fine, they're from Myanmar and they're going to Indiana. But are you telling me that first, Americans can't farm their own land? Second, you got, what, 26 million unemployed Americans at this moment, and you won't let them farm their land? So, and you're giving these visas. So that was my issue. So when does a culture become, I'm too good for that job? I am too good to work. I'm too good to farm. I'll let somebody else do that for me. So what do you think about this? Do you think this is the right time for this kind of program? Or do you think this should have been postponed or whatnot? Please leave your comment below. Do you like farming? How is farming rated in your country? You know, and in Vietnam, many people farm their land and they actually enjoy it. They'll share what they grow with their friends, and they do have big farms. So, and in Japan, many times the economy contracts, and when it does, many of those people go to the farms, and a good like 1/3 of them stay on the farm because they fall in love with the land and working it. So again, leave your comments below. Like, comment, subscribe. Okay, moving on to our next article. 7 washed away in Long Parvong floods. This took place in Laos. Okay, and so there was a big flood. And the reason, I'll get to in a minute why this was important to me. 3 people have been killed and 4 others have been reported missing after flash floods swept through the village in Lapangapur. I actually stayed there once for when I traveled. It was a really nice place. Flash floods swept through Kapata village in Lapangapur in the district on Friday morning following the heavy rains by a tropical storm. The village was hit by torrential rains for 2 hours, washing away the temporary homes of 2 families working along the riverbank, according to the head of the village, Mr. Charbak. The affected area is about an hour away from our village. 2 families went there for production. Rescuers found 3 bodies in the aftermath, with 4 people still missing. Local authorities are working with local military to search for the missing people and are providing assistance to the families affected by the floods. Deputy Governor of Lavore, had made a visit to the site alongside provincial and district authorities to assist and search in the remaining missing persons. Should be people, but people. All right. A storm warning was announced by the Meteorology and Hydrology Department under the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, according to Lavore News. Okay, so the reason I brought this up is, do you know how to swim? And who taught you, or were you afraid of it, or do you not know how to swim? If you don't know how to swim, what prevents you from learning? Why are you afraid of the water? Because floods happen all over, from islands to any coastal place to any place that has mountains, mudslides, floods. Even Bangkok flooded. So, anyway, tell me about your swimming experience. If you like it, you hate it, and when did you learn? Like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, now we're talking about A Sign of the Times. This story caught my eye because we all fly on airplanes, and AirAsia put out a new uniform outfit for their pilots. And basically, if you're looking at this on YouTube, then you can see the picture. But if you're listening to the podcast, they have a full facial mask, a full hood, uh, another mask under the hood. They're wearing gloves and a full like raincoat, dress coat uniform. So they're 100% protected. So Jakarta, a low-cost air carrier, AirAsia, has introduced a new personal protective equipment (PPE) for its cabin crew to be used as flights resume in the coming days in the region. Designed in collaboration with Filipino fashion designer Pui Quibur. Actually, I have an article on him a while back where he actually felt honored to make clothes for the frontline workers. So I'll try to find the article, put a card up there for you. For the PPE suits, which he launched last Friday on April 24th during a recovery flight from Bangkok to Manila, embracing the airlines, the signature red-hot color, and had reportedly been approved by the Filipino Department of Health. According to Quantona's Instagram account, the Los Angeles-based designer has been busy designing and manufacturing PPE suits for hospitals as well as brands such as AirAsia following the outbreak. Flight attendants will be required to wear the PPE units on all carrier domestic and international flights. Airlines are among the businesses hit hardest by the pandemic. Singapore Airlines recently announced the cancellation of 96% of its scheduled flights until the end of June, which Richard Barron is reportedly seeking a buyer for Virgin Atlantic Airways, as he struggles to secure the £500 million of a government bailout. On April 17th, AirAsia announced it had set to resume the scheduled domestic flights commencing with Malaysia on Wednesday, April 29th, following Thailand on Friday, India on May 1st, and Indonesia May 4th and 7th, and the Philippines May 7th. So, all right, subject to approval. So, what do you think of this uniform? The 100% effective. Do you next think that if the dining restaurants open again, that like all waiters and waitresses will have something like this? Maybe all cashiers have something like this? Yes, no? Leave your comments below. And would you actually wear one of these to your job? Right? Even if you're in a government job, would you wear a uniform like that? Leave your answers below. Okay, moving on to the next article of the day. And this one is pretty controversial. Don't have to fight for pennies. New Zealand safety net helps sex workers in lockdowns. If you recall, we just did one on Hong Kong and a few other governments, Indonesia, Singapore, where they were cracking down, locking up the sex workers, or they were complaining they had no money. So now in New Zealand, it's going the opposite directions. Sex workers have spent decades working with the government. This has provided life savings during the COVID-19 crisis. The week before New Zealand went into full lockdown on March 26, Lena, 28, had taken a break from work at the high-end Wellington brothel, where since September she had made around $2,200 a month, seeing 2 or 3 clients a week. On March 23rd, her university announced that courses would move online. The following day, she decided to stay with her parents. Okay, great. Then, in the last 2 days later, the money slump came because covering 12 weeks, the government put this mandatory lockdown. So basically, she lost $7,000 last month because she couldn't work. So then what she did is New Zealand has an online, kind of like America's 1200 for many people. New Zealand is giving out a package, and the form only took about 3 minutes to fill out, and I didn't need to disclose that I am a sex worker. I only needed to disclose that I am self-employed. That's all she had to do is put her self-employed, her name, her national ID, her bank account, and she got the money. So in New Zealand, sex work is seen as any other form of work under the country's discrimination model. What do you think about that? That's why this got me thinking. Do you think it's a job just like any other job? Which was developed with input from sex workers themselves and became law in 2003. As a carnivorous impact the country after country, exposing the deep-seated inequalities and further marginalizing vulnerable workers, New Zealand's policy framework had helped sex workers in contrast find financial security and safety during the time of crisis. Because sex work is not criminal in my experience, I think that it just creates an environment where you are respected, says Lana, who studied politics and language. You got so much behind your back. She's using the time to focus on her studies and volunteer with community justice organizations, writing on social and human rights issues. They have to live. They have to pay rent. There's perhaps no country in the world in which the government and sex workers community, in which New Zealand numbers around 3,500 people, have a robust and productive relationship. In fact, the sex industry in New Zealand has been discriminated, has a lot of advantages, and it proves itself now with this virus issue, in the sense that all sex workers in New Zealand get access to the benefits. So what do you think about that? And if that's the case, well, should everybody, who cares what your job is, get access to it? In addition to the emergency was subsidy, the New Zealand workers just by providing national ID, okay, and they are also immediately eligible for job-seeking benefits. The weekly payouts would be $2,000 a month. All right. So again, I'm not going to keep going into it, but again, my article was, would you prefer in your government if sex works was a regular type of job and regular type of unemployment benefits work, or should it kind of still be black market and off the books? Please leave your comments below. I'd be really interested in hearing you on this. Okay, moving on. Now this one was interesting. They were talking about how protesting in the age of the coronavirus. As you know, many times people can no longer gather in big groups anymore. Why? Because they can get sick. So how will they protest? How do you protest in the era of coronaviruses? In Russia, virtual protesting has clustered outside government buildings as a safe social distance. and they post messages online demanding more financial assistance from authorities. Young climate change activists have hailed. Oh, Jesus, I don't like that. So, for our last article of the day, because of the virus and the fact that people can no longer be close together and thus they might get each other sick, how do you protest when you want change? So, how do you protest in the era of the coronavirus? In Russia, virtual protesters have clustered outside government buildings at a safe social distance and have post messages online demanding more financial assistance from authorities. Young climate change activists have heeded the call by Swedish teenager Greta Thunberg, the founder of the global school strike movement, to assist a big protest to help contain the novel coronavirus. We have to adapt. That is what you have to do in a crisis, she told activists last month. She encouraged her followers to move their climate action protest online and use the hashtag #DigitalStrike. 2019 was a revolutionary year with 12 months of protests and mass mobilizations from Hong Kong to France, Luxembourg. Okay, a few parts of the world were unaffected. In Russian capital Moscow, protests were outraged by the ritual elections. In Britain, people rallied against Brexit. In Ukraine and Central European states are all experiencing major demonstrations. Separatists battled police in their respective regions. All right. So in all these places, things are going on. So many movements are determined not to be silenced, although they acknowledge that they can't be as effective now as they were last year. That's one reason why I think China purposely set the virus free, so they can pretty much deal with Hong Kong and everywhere else. All right. As the European countries' climate changes, and Germany has gone digital, blanketing the internet and social media with demands for deep cuts in greenhouse gas emissions. Wow, how nice. We're trying, and then so moving on, there are some people who are protesting with chairs 2 meters apart, but they're just leaving names on it. In Poland, women's activists last week used their cars to defy Poland's lockdown and block the main roundabouts in the country's capital, protesting against legislation to tighten Poland's abortion laws. Wow, so women don't want responsibility, which are already among the most restrictive in Europe. Others dressed head and toe in black, weaved through streets on bicycles, maintaining distances, but provoking police to warn that assembling was illegal and in breach of the virus restrictions. Women protesters also hung banners from balconies. Another protest this week saw women wearing face masks, lining up 2 meters apart. Now that's okay, I can agree to that one. Complaining that the right-wing populist government was trying to exploit the pandemic to get legislation passed. And I agree to that too. Again, it's probably what China did, not just for Hong Kong, but to get all the East China Sea and to cripple the U.S. economy. The less money you have, less military you have, and so forth. So anyway, well, I have a question for you. I'm not going to necessarily read the rest of this article, but in what unique way would you protest, since you can't really march? What unique way, and what would you protest for? So it's really two questions. What unique way would you get your point out, and what would you protest for? Me, I probably would protest. Well, some two people wanted to protest in my current country, Vietnam. They wanted kind of like a lifetime visa, so in case that way the things would never expire, and therefore they wanted to post things online. So anyway, leave like, comment, subscribe below, answer the two questions. Hi, the small clip you saw was brought to you by Loyal World News. If you like what you saw, you should subscribe and look up my daily Loyal World News report for its full version. If you don't want to watch it on YouTube, prefer to be on the road, I also have a podcast in every full-length video I put up.